And so this is a very, very important part of the next part of agriculture. People are not realizing that food safety has to be on your menu, okay? Because all of the restaurants in Waikiki will not take anything unless it's food safety certified. All the military will not take anything in their doors unless it's food safety certified.
And the food wholesalers, nobody is taking
That's
anything.
correct.
Yeah.
And we're having a problem now because we had been able to get the amount of produce produced in the state up to 15%. And then there were upspringing of so many farmers markets. And it's good for the farmers. However, the retailers are not having enough products going into their shelves. And
so a wholesaler needs a certain amount of
volume.
Tomatoes, cucumbers, carrots. They need a guaranteed delivery.
That's correct.
And there was sporadic delivery then? Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. We have some farms that are on the North Shore, for instance, that have their names on the menus of all of the North Shore restaurants. They have since taken them off there because they were not consistent suppliers of quality products. They chose instead to go to the farmer's market rather than giving it to the restaurant. So they said, why are we trying to promote you when you are not trying to help us? And so it's going to be very hard for the farmer to get back into that venue as far as being an advertised company on a menu, because they were burned so badly.
But it sounds like there's so many moving parts here. If we can get the fresh water and get more farmers on the land and get more fresh crops, there needs to be a commitment, if I understand you correctly, to deliver and deliver consistently. And then you've got they'll have a business model then that could be promoted and work with the local. Because most chefs, I think most restaurants, some of the top level chefs in this state are using as much as possible local, but they can't risk erratic delivery, correct?
Erratic delivery and safe foods too.
And safe foods.
Yes, because if they don't have it food safety certified, it's not going to happen.
It ties in with our farm to school discussions. Right. It ties in with everything. So I understand food. Can we just, maybe it's a little off track, but it's related. The food safety or the food security essentially it's a way to track where things come from, to certify that it's clean, but also a way to make sure you know what was put into it, put on it, put in it, and where it came from.
One of the things that people are not realizing that it's going to come down from the federal government. And right now, it's at the gates, and people are saying, well, it doesn't apply to me because I'm a small farmer kind of thing. But it's going to apply to everyone. And if, for instance, farmers are growing things and say, well, I don't want to be going through the system, so I'm going to just sell it in Chinatown, or I'm going to be selling only at the farmer's market, it's okay. But if you have one instance where someone gets sick, then you're going to have the entire market closed. And this is where I get very worried. I'm an educator by training. And so as I hear about these school gardens, which I really agree with, but they really cannot feed the products that they're producing
until they
to the
are
skid.
Certified safe.
Okay.
Well,
I don't think at this point that the schools are food safety certified, and because we have been trying to get them to go through the program, and it does take a little bit of paperwork, but then it's not onerous. So they really should be trying to get on that wagon and say, I really need to have safe food for the children in school.
Yeah, I think that's actually in the works. The Department of Agriculture this year during the legislative session agreed to accept that as one of their kuleana. As far as the details that are worked out, that's yet to be seen. But hopefully Department of Agriculture will be working with the Department of Education to designate or delegate or to oversee the food security issues for the school gardening. So there's hope on that.
I hope so.
But we're not there yet. So we've talked about water, we've talked about funding for the water systems, we've talked about the land, we've talked about food security, wetland remediation. There's also a project to, as I mentioned, to clean up the water on the lake and some of the entry sources. What do you think is going to be the future of the North Shore, maybe 15 years from now? Will it all be houses and subdivisions? Will it just be eco tours, or are we going to have diversified farms, or a mix of everything? What do you think?
Well,
put on your Chamber of Commerce hat.
Right,
Chamber of Commerce
right.
hat now. What do we have for the North Shore?
One of the things is that we do need housing, low-income housing for tenants in that area.
Okay.
However, we cannot have only houses. We have to have agriculture, and the North Shore is the last contiguous acres that we have on Oahu. And so if we can brand the North Shore as a breadbasket to bring all of this to the markets in Hawaii, I think we will be very, very good. You see, one of the things that we've tried to work together with all the farmers in the North Shore. So you have Kahuku brand, you have the fish people, Ron Wiedenbach and his tilapia,
Right.
and then you have Jeannie Vanna and her tomatoes, and you had Oils of Aloha who just moved out, but you know, and then you have HPC Foods and the taro, and all of these people are trying to make a go on the North Shore, but a lot of it has ties to water, but it also has ties to leases, and we are still on that edge with the leases too, with the
that
landowners.
long-term commitment of the landowners.
Right.
You know? And
So,
there's cacao. Speaking of a new
that's
product,
right.
the cacao
That's right.
production is going very well.
And it's supposed to be the best cultivars in the world at
to
that
making great
location.
chocolate.
Yes.
And the coffee production. So there are other crops, and you know, people forget too. Even you know, Dole isn't what it once was, but they're still growing some pineapples out there, and they're still growing various crops. Kamehameha Schools owns a lot of land. Hopefully, they're going to enhance some of the agricultural actions. Would you like to talk a little bit about Alluvion Farms? How did that come to be, and tell us about that?
As I indicated, I'm an educator, and then I had moved back from Seattle. We lived there for 8 years, and there were no teaching positions. And then so I got into agriculture as a salesperson, and then became general manager for AMFAC, and then after that went off to Ka'ava, really far north.
Well,
yes, and then did an operation with a partner from Taiwan for 5 years. And then 13 years ago, moved to the old Meadow Grove site, and that's where we have Alluvion. And all of the names of the companies I worked with start with an A. And the reason for that is that people look at the yellow pages starting at the top.
Okay,
and
that's
so
a marketing instinct.
Yes, right. And so when I looked at Alluvion, I actually combed the dictionary to see something that had to do with agriculture, and that's how I got the name.
The Alluvion Fields.
Alluvion.
And you sell, what are your products?
We are a nursery, full-fledged nursery, and then we have a full florist operation and do gift baskets and plant rentals.
Good deal, good deal. In summary then, what do you think we can do, or what can the public do or be aware? How can our viewers today look at the North Shore? What should they know about the North Shore? What's the takeaway from our discussion today?
Well, I think it's not only the North Shore, but we are hoping that it will become that hub, because right now, because of the water limitations, we cannot grow a lot of products. But if you are buying things that are grown in Hawaii, it's much more important than buying things that are organic, that are coming from 3,000 miles away, because you're not reducing that carbon footprint that everybody talks about.
And you're possibly bringing in more invasive species, more pests. And
that's where we have gotten more alien species than any other product.
What do you think about the, you know, with the price of fuel going up, how do you think our farmers are going to endure that? It hurts the shipping, and so even if we're growing locally, if we're importing material, seed, fertilizer, product, we're still getting hit. But if we can produce some of it locally,
this is a very important component that the university is looking at too, in trying to develop fertilizers that can be produced on the islands. Because if we don't have to import all of that, then the farmer currently pays almost the highest price per container, even if we are at the grower level. So this is where I think if we can work with the legislator to say, you know, if you are actually doing farming, are there some price breaks that the shipping companies can work with the farmers, not subsidies so much, but then, you know,
the best rates. Did I hear right that the big box companies can bring in a container, and I don't know the numbers, but maybe for $2,000 they can bring in a container, but the average guy, farmer maybe, pays $4,000 for a container.
Now, but $7 now.
$7,000 for a container of material or whatever you need.
That's correct. And I think probably the big boxes may have gone up, kind of thing, but it's based
There's still
on
a disparity.
volume. Yes.
So you've got a finished product coming in, competing against locally produced products. They're at a competitive disadvantage right there.
And this is why the dairies have gone out of business, because they could not afford to bring in the feed for the cows and so on. But I have some really good, exciting news.
Tell us.
Hopefully this is impacting the state of Hawaii, because the cattle industry just recently started to work with the Foodland stores, and so all 24 Foodland stores will be carrying local beef. You know, some of the specialty markets like Whole Foods and Umeke and so on have been doing natural beef, but then when you get it into the commodity market where the general consumer can get it, this is very, very exciting. They are bringing in the cattle from the Big Island and slaughtering it at the Kalaloa Hawaii Livestock Cooperative Slaughterhouse. So if we can keep that one open, it's going to help Hawaii. It's not going to only, and it'll help the state. So that
was a little bit of a political hot potato this past legislative session, the slaughterhouse. We received so much email against it from the, mostly from the people for the ethical treatment of animals were opposed to it, and they basically crashed the Capitol's email system by sending in opposition to it. And the question, I think, came down to, do we want to keep that slaughterhouse for projects such as you mentioned, that, you know, are we going to give it a shot or not? It was an expensive decision to go forward with the slaughterhouse, but it seems to me that it was absolutely necessary if we're going to make agriculture a go and have fresh meats.
I don't think that people realize that we are importing 95% of our beef. Only 10,000 head of cattle are currently being consumed here.
And many of them are shipped off for fattening and then processing, and then they come back. Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot about agriculture, and we really have to try to support all of agriculture. Floriculture is another one. You know, we all have the flowers from the Big Island and so on, and we're in that business too. But we have mushrooms that are growing here. We have avocados, and that's a really big thing that needs to be really supported by the state.
There are products, and there's also for the export market, not just for local consumption. Well, we grow crops that are unique within the United States that we probably could and should be exporting more relevantly. We're almost out of time. We're coming up to the end. Is there any last closing thoughts or words?
Well, if anything, if we can get people to buy local, because our money stays in Hawaii. And I just want to give that really simple example. I should have brought it. If we had 2 eggs together, which one would be a local egg? The clean white egg or the one with the U.S. stamp?
Oh, I want the clean white egg. That sounds like the one
for me. Very good.
So there you go. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for coming in today and talking with us and sharing your knowledge about this. It's always helpful and refreshing to talk about agriculture, and that's how it goes on Gil Gets It Done. Thank you.